Sir, if you want.
All right, evening, everybody. Glad to see everybody here. And we have a special guest speaker tonight. It's Mr. Aaron Swift. He's with the HOA board and head of Swift Law Firm. I think that's the proper word for it. And we're going to be discussing the camping law in detail and have a legal point of view for it. But please try to stay the topic. I know it's tempting. We have a knowledgeable gentleman here for free legal advice, but let's stick to our topic. And let's go ahead and start the meeting.
All right. So since we don't yet have quorum, I'm going to go ahead and skip past the consent agenda right now because we can't vote on that yet. So let's save that until a little bit later once we achieve quorum. For right now, we'll also skip past the membership application because, well, that's an action item and we need quorum for that as well. So I think that we will go ahead and dive right into our guest presentation. Mr. Swift, come on up, whatever you prefer.
I'll stay here. All right, well, welcome everyone, and I want to introduce myself again. I am Aaron Swift. Gary, you need something real quick? Or you have your hand up? Okay, so my name is Aaron Swift, and I want to give you a little bit of backstory. So I myself have lived experience in this community. I am 41 years old, but I was born in St. Petersburg in 1983. But from 1985 to 1989, I was homeless with my mother, my brother. My mother was homeless, or was pregnant, lived at Alpha House for on and off for 4 years, and also in Casa. We moved to Pennsylvania back and forth, Florida a couple of years, until we finally settled in Pennsylvania, and then I moved back to Florida, to law school, came back to the law school specifically to help get back to this community. So I've spent several years on the board of Alpha House, then I spent years on the board of the HOA, and now I'm going to be in another leadership role. And I'm so excited to be here today with you because I am so moved to be in a position to help and give back because lived experience has so many different faces. And it can look so many different ways. And lived experience needs to be looked at and explored and celebrated. And that's what this council should be about. And I want to be a resource. So tonight I want to talk about this anti-camping legislation. And I want to be very open and honest and transparent about it. And I can wear many hats to do that. And so I need to be very transparent about what hat I'm wearing when I answer questions, okay? So I'm gonna put on a lawyer hat real quick because I am a lawyer. So I need to give you a disclaimer. I am not your lawyer tonight, so I am not giving you individual legal advice. I'm not establishing a lawyer-client relationship, okay? So if you ask me an individual legal question, I'm gonna say, we have to talk about that some other time. I'm here to talk about this anti-camping bill and how it could impact us, our neighbors, this population, okay? Let me take off that lawyer hat. Let me put on my HOA representation hat. As an advocate for this community, this bill is written in a very artful way. Nowhere does it say it criminalizes homelessness or the unhoused population. Right? We can read it together tonight if we had to. It's very artful. So I can talk to you from a lawyer perspective as an advocate about what the bill actually does.
I've never cited it towards the bill.
And we can talk about it, right? So that's, again, I'm going to talk about it from that perspective, what the bill does and what the bill doesn't do. And then I can talk about, as a true advocate, the last hat, what can we do to maybe make the bill better? I can tell you, there was a Supreme Court case through the last term. There was a chance that this law could have been stricken down. That law, unfortunately, was not stricken down and is not going to be.
John Birch, Branch, guy.
Yes, exactly right. It's a case called Johnson versus Grants Pass. It was not stricken down, so laws like this, the one we're talking about tonight, it's going to be on the books. So our chance of it not being on the books is very little. So we have to try to make it better. There's ways to do that. We can think about it. So again, there's kind of three hats, right? My lawyer hat from advice, I have to be very careful. My lawyer hat, what does the bill do? What does it currently, what does it do? What doesn't it do? And then are there ways we can do better? And that's what this council as an advocate, advocacy council. So, cool. All right. I'll open up the floor. Questions? And again, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's a really pleasure and honor. I'm going to be at these basically going forward. So.
Excellent. Okay, so you heard it. Here you go. You have an opportunity to ask somebody who is more knowledgeable than I am about this anti-camping law. I know that we have had a ton of questions over the last few months, so I'm excited to again bring in somebody who just knows more about these things. So before we start asking questions, I'm going to ask that everybody give Mr. Swift their name as an introduction before you ask a question. So I would say, hi, I'm Victoria. Can you tell me, when does this law go into effect?
That's a great question. So we are actually right now in kind of this in-between period. So portions of the law went into effect October 1st. And those are the actual anti-camping provisions. So as of October 1st, so a couple months ago, it became illegal, not technically to sleep or to camp outdoors as the individual, but for a municipality or public, like a city or a governance or a public body to allow it to happen. And again, that's a very kind of artful way to draft the bill, right? It doesn't say it is illegal for an individual to do so. What the bill says, it is illegal for the governing body, the public, the city, the county, the governing, the municipality. That went into effect as of October 1st. Coincidentally, not until January 1st, so we're not quite there yet. As of that date, that becomes lawful for either individuals or groups or businesses to then sue the city if they allow it to happen. So we're in this kind of what we call this almost pregnant pause period, where we're kind of seeing what's happening. And if I can answer the question in a more blunt way, what we're seeing law enforcement do, and it kind of bleeds into the next agenda item about interactions with law enforcement, how law enforcement are enforcing this anti-camping bill is saying, well, we already have these other ordinances and laws in the books to enforce, which are basically trespass laws. Right, so they're saying what this bill disallows is public sleeping and public camping, which are, campgrounds, well, not private campgrounds, public campgrounds, parks, walkways, bridges, public benches in front of libraries, museums. If we don't allow municipalities and governments to allow it to happen, well, how do we enforce that? It's to enforce the trespass, the socializing, whatever ordinance, or even some are passing those now to accommodate, is the words they're saying, this other state law. So that's a very long answer to it. When does it go into effect? Again, we're in this in-between period. As of October 1st, it became illegal for cities, municipalities, counties to allow it to happen. And some law enforcement groups, we have told, have done two things. One is they have only been enforcing this with groups of 6 or more. And we've also been told they have just been using the October 1st to January 1st period as a warning period. That even though October 1st became the enforcement period was eligible, they've said, we're not really going to enforce that. Now, again, that's not all municipalities in Pinellas County, so be very careful, but some, that's been announced at a task force meeting recently. But they said as of October 1st, we're just going to say, hey, we're giving warnings. We're now saying January 1st, that's when the other part of the law comes into effect. So that's where we're going to start really enforcing. But they're also saying, we're going to tell you how we're going to enforce it. This is the enforcement mechanism. This is the trespass law, or this is the X ordinance and the penalty that's associated with it. Because again, this anti-camping legislation doesn't have that, the criminal association or that the other enforcement mechanism. Because again, it's a roundabout way. What it really does is it says the public body is not allowed to allow it to happen. And then private citizens or businesses can sue if it does, which again, doesn't start till January. So great question that allows you to really get into the nuts and bolts of the law. So follow-up questions?
I see homeless people all the time. And I was at Pinellas Help and Safe Harbor last year, horrible experiences, but so what do I do? If I see is there a time frame, like at night till 6 o'clock in the morning, they're not allowed to sleep on public property? And do I take a picture if I see somebody homeless sleeping on the property? How do I prove that I saw somebody homeless if I feel like I want to sue the city?
Well, let me write down that question into some subparts. So first of all, the law itself says overnight, which is kind of a vague word. So remember I talked about I can use different hats. Lawyers don't like when there's vagueness built into laws. So now there are some municipalities who are trying to define that. So some are saying it's 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. That makes sense. Some are saying, well, in the wintertime, like now, it's dark at 6 p.m. So maybe it should be 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So some are trying to define what that means. And now they're saying, all right, there's a state law that says overnight, so we're trying to define that more clearly. So you might want to check with your specific municipality. In terms of as a private citizen, what you might or might not do, again, that would be direct legal advice. That's something I can't give you. You'd have to either ask me outside or just find another private lawyer. And that wouldn't become available until, again, after January 1st to sue for that type of complaint.
We have a little line going, so I'll put your name on the list. We do have 2 more people in.
So I want to make sure we started late, but we're past the agenda.
Okay.
Presentation.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 questions, and does anybody else have a burning question? All right, we're gonna cap it there then, okay?
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm a committee member of the LEAC, lived experience. I am curious to know, is it past the point to appeal? Is there any way the public, the diverse community, that have the shared vision, to change the law? Is there anything that we could do? I know it would be time consuming, but is that a possibility?
That's an excellent question. First, thank you for introducing yourself. Following the rules, I appreciate that. I'm going to put on hat number 3 now, right? So, which is the advocacy hat. I think that is something we should consider, right? This is the committee. This is an advisory committee. This is something that the committee could decide is an advisory position to take, as this is a law that affects those with lived experience. It could take a position and want to say, this is a lobbying effort. This is something it could take back to the HLA and say the HLA has a advocacy committee. and then say, hey, we have a recommendation to make to the advocacy committee, and we want to be involved in an advocacy position or an advocacy, effort. And I think that'd be very well taken. And you're right, it would be a lot of time. I would say, to answer your second and third questions, no, it's not too late. It's absolutely too late to get this law itself repealed. And it's absolutely too late to think that in and of itself will not, or will go away. What I think we're gonna have to fight is it getting worse. And I think we wanna fight little ways to make it better. And I think some ways are to define words like overnight. We want it to be consistent. We know that our lived experience and our population are not stagnant, right? And they're migratory. Wouldn't it be nice to have this law be consistent overnight in Pinellas County consistently? Wouldn't you like to know it's 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. everywhere in the county? I think that, our population, it'd be nice if it was consistent. So we could maybe go to Tallahassee and say that should be written into the law. Because there's something called preemption in the law. So now I'm going to put my lawyer hat on real quick. And so when you pass a law at the state level, it basically governs all the laws that are passed below it, which are kind of municipality rules, county rules. Just like when a law is passed at the federal level, it overrides state rules. So it kind of always trickles down. So that's why, again, we could go try to take an advocacy position to the advocacy committee and go to Tallahassee and say, well, we want to make this law better. And we think consistency would be better for our, population. So again, I think that's absolutely. And as a member, I think it's something that could be added to the agenda and say, we want to make this better. How can we do that? And that would be awesome.
What Jennifer said there at the end was definitely we need to humanize.
We need to humanize.
So everybody knows.
Yes.
All right, next question.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I've been staying in Largo area and I know this is regarding the police. However, what if a business they act like they're the police and they're videoing you and harassing you as if they are? Is that something that can be done for that or written in law?
So with specific to this law, this is anti-camping on public property. So that wouldn't be covered by this law at all. And I would then have to put on my lawyer hat and say, I can't answer that specific question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Just, curious, a lot of them, they don't like homelessness and they're harassing a lot of homeless.
Wait, it's okay, that's my fault, I want, wait.
So it's not all of them, but it's an owner of this hookah bar and him and a few others like to harass the homelessness because they don't like homelessness. And so I just thought, because they think they are a cop or whatever they want to think. So that's what I was just saying.
Again, I want to be very careful. I'm going to ask you a question, but it's not being asked as a lawyer, so I'm not asking a question as if I'm asking a question in order to give you advice.
Right.
When they are quote harassing anyone, the people that they are quote harassing, are they on public property or are they on private property?
I believe it's public. It's a plaza and then you have a restaurant in the middle of the plaza.
Well, that distinction is important. So that's all I'm
I would
going to
say
say. Again, I'm not giving any advice. I didn't ask that question to give advice. That distinction may be important in that situation. And that's all I can say about that possible situation.
Okay, thank you.
What I will add to that, and Aaron, I don't know if you want to add on to this, is that come January, businesses and residents, as Mr. Swift said earlier, will be allowed to sue local government for allowing public sleeping. Now, that does not mean they will see you and bam, there's a lawsuit filed. There's a whole process that they have to go through, but that is probably, and I can say this as not an attorney, that is probably a consideration come January 1st. Oh, we had one more question over here.
I also misread the agenda. We have 10 more minutes.
There we go. If we
If
have
there's more
another question, we
questions.
should do another question.
I just want to know, I just want, I don't know if to make this make sense. I mean, it's just, their answer to this is to eventually just trespass people out of town that they don't want to see around. Where was the help that we were promised when they were trying to advocate to pass this bill in the first place? Where was the housing help and everything that we were promised in order to alleviate this problem?
Name,
Silas.
are you a member?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for being a member. There's a correlation between your comment and questions and Jennifer's, which is there was a very, very, very large, coordinated, very well-funded effort to fight this bill that was humanized and a lot of money, time, effort spent. It was outspent 10-1. And unfortunately, the makeup of Tallahassee right now, I'm sorry, I get choked up. It is an uphill fight. And it's
Oh, I
gonna
did
get
try. I told Rick Scott and also Joe Lopatto to their face that if they went up there and passed that bill, that they were gonna open a can of worms. They had no idea that they what they were doing.
And
they told me they were gonna do it anyway. They didn't give a shit.
and you know,
That Rick Scott's words to me, I don't give a shit. We're doing it anyway.
and I've been up there, and I'll be up there a lot more, right? And I can just say, we have been in a tough cycle where entitlements are made to look as a place to cut, and then promises are made, and then that cycle continues. And we know that permanent supportive housing is the answer, and it's promised and it's not done. So the best we can do, at least as it's related to this specific answer, is this bill is not going away. We have to make small changes to it and humanize even the small changes,
I can tell
because
you when it comes to the supportive housing and stuff, the other thing is if that's going to be part of the answer. The timeline on that needs to really hurry the F up, okay? Because it shouldn't take 4 or 5. Sorry, it shouldn't take 4 or 5 years to do that either. And for me, it actually kind of has. And what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to sit with my thumb up my rear for that 5 years, waiting to get something to actually happen? That makes no sense. Why are we the only country in the world where that kind of stuff happens? Why?
that question is the question why I'm here. We're all here to help.
After about 2 or 3 dozen times of platitudes, I'm sorry's, I can't help you.
My name is Norm. I'm a voting member of the LEAC committee. And related to these questions, of course, we all know that this stems from the Supreme Court ruling that this law or any same type of law is constitutional. We know that. However, is there any way to challenge this before either the state court or the Supreme Court, along the lines of contending that this is not just or not right, formulating this and presenting it to the courts? Is there any way that we can formulate something like that to present before the courts and challenge it?
So I, as a lawyer, there's a famous response to a question like that is, you can try anything in a court of law. That unfortunately will fail. There is no argument that will succeed in front of this iteration of the Supreme Court that will strike this law down as unconstitutional. They had every chance to do so. There's a principle called stare decisis, and it's a Supreme Court principle that basically says when decision is made, we follow it. Now, this Supreme Court sometimes conveniently doesn't, but they just made this decision on this law, and they had reasons, and every reason to decide it was unconstitutional, including whether it was just or right. And they said it was. Under every iteration of every argument, including whether it was due process, whether it was literally, and I can give you a little bit more of the facts, that this town had no beds, nowhere to go, out of options, literally no option for this gentleman, sleeping on a bench, and fined him. And was that cruel and an unusual punishment? That he had no other choice? And the Supreme Court said, no, that is not cruel. That is not unusual. So, I just got really bad chills to say that is just, that is right. That is the argument that was made. So no. And I hate to give you that answer.
The real argument was made was, it's on you, it's your fault. If that's what your situation is, it's your fault.
I do request that people only speak when you have the microphone, please. It's the only way that everybody can hear. We want to respect accessibility. We do have one question here from Mike, and then I am going to have to cut us off for the agenda there. We do have a couple of things we have to go back to as well. So, co-chair.
Sorry for that.
Thank you for coming. My name is Mike Grayson. I'm part of the executive committee and co-chair along with Gary with this community. And I want, and along the lines of what the fellow members are saying is, I know that for a fact that the anti-camping law does not give any real resources to the cities and towns that they're supposed to. So I know you mentioned we really don't know what's gonna happen after January. Okay, that being said, I know about the grants passed this year, it doesn't technically saying being homeless is illegal. Oh. All right. So, question is, what is the COC and the HLA going to do in 2025 to help with this immediate problem of towns not having the resources to help people who need the help that they're supposed to be provided, but are not? And what do you see in 2025 that HLA can accomplish with concrete goals? What kind of things we're working?
So there's two questions. The first question, if I understand it, is the bill absolutely did not provide sufficient funding to the local governments. Is that that was the statement? And then the question is, what is the HLA and or COC doing because of that in 2025? Is that the first question I understand correctly? Yes.
Our goals for the 2025 grant plan in terms of helping the community get those funds, for example. And those if I can be. That's
right.
That basically can do, and this rest of the POC is a whole thing to define.
That's part of what I meant by the promise, because that was part of it, that was our information for passing it.
Right, and I guess the simplest thing I will say is, I'm gonna defer to the task force, which is, that's its entire goal, is the immediate response, which has representations from law enforcement, funders, the HLA board, and it has some concrete goals from its last meeting that are being worked on. In terms of funding, again, I don't want to overstep. I don't know what's appropriate in a recorded meeting to talk about funds or availability, but there are some recent funds tied from the that are specific to this exact issue. And I think there's going to be a lot of that to address this issue. And that's where the HLA's focus is going to be.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Swift, do you mind if I ask, if folks, I know that we had questions that didn't get answered. Kat, I'm so sorry. I think I wrote you on my list and then skipped you. I'm so sorry. Mary and Jennifer, I know that y'all had more questions, but we do have to stick to our agenda. Is it okay if folks write down some questions, give them to us by the end of the meeting and we email them to you?
Yes.
Perfect. If you have a question for Mr. Swift, that did not get answered today, please write it down. Give it to me and Megan. We will send it to Mr. Swift. We will make sure that we send that answer out to everybody because really valuable information here, really good resource. And I know that y'all have some really important questions and I don't want to skip them. So thank you so much. We have to go forward with the agenda, Norm. So thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to ask that we go backwards just a little bit and we review the consent agenda. That, of course, is meeting attendance and meeting minutes from our last meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments or edits to that?
I'd like to thank those of you who were late. Thank you for the quorum. We appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Any changes, any remarks? There a motion to approve? Jennifer?
Norm, in your second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Norm seconds it.
Okay.
Agenda approved.
All in favor?
Oh, we vote now. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Anyone abstaining? Motion approved.
All right. Excellent. Thank you all for that one. That was quick and easy. All right, next on the agenda, we have the Lived Experience Advisory Committee application. So as you all know, we started meeting summer of last year, and we did not develop a membership application. We did develop a charter, which is really exciting. We have elected, when I say we, of course, y'all always know, I don't really mean me, I mean you. But we elected co-chairs and a secretary. And we have established goals and we have held a lot of really cool meetings, very exciting. Continuing on with that theme of solidifying this as a permanent functioning committee is a committee membership application, okay? The committee membership application is in addition to your continuum of care membership application, okay? So for anybody who is unfamiliar, to be a member of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee, you must first be a member of the Pinellas Continuum of Care. That application is available online, and if there's anybody who hasn't completed it or needs assistance completing it, please let me know. Megan and I are happy to help you. I also know that Gary has helped more than one or two people with that, so please just let us know if you need help. Now we are looking at a committee membership application as well. And this will give members the opportunity to vote on fellow committee members and to really ensure that we have a well-rounded membership body, okay? So the idea of this membership application is that every single person who wants to be a member of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee completes this. We'll have it available online as well as a paper form. If you have to do the paper form, just make sure you hand it in to me or Megan or one of the co-chairs or secretary. And This will then go to Lived Experience Advisory Committee leadership. Megan and I will review it. We'll make sure that all the boxes are checked, all of the things are filled out. But then we will send this to committee leadership and they will review it as well. If they have questions, they'll go ahead, come back and ask them questions. And then once committee leadership has approved it, then it will come to the entire committee for review and approval, okay? So that'll be the process. Everybody will complete a membership application. The membership application will be reviewed by either Megan or myself, just to make sure it's complete. We will send it to committee leadership who will review it. And if they approve it, it will come to the entire group for approval. And then once approved, you will be an official member. This is how a lot of the other committees and councils within the COC function. And we just want to make sure that we are, again, moving forward in a really productive way. The Lived Experience Advisory Committee charter does cap membership at 20 people. We can have as many guests as we can fit in the room and on Zoom. Love that, love guests, love outside participation. Tell all of your friends to come. But voting membership per our charter is capped at 20 individuals, okay? As a member, you are eligible to vote like we just did. You are also eligible to receive a stipend if you are a lived experience member of the COC. That means that you have experienced homelessness within the last 7 years. If you have experienced homelessness more than 7 years ago, please continue to participate. You just aren't eligible for the stipends at that point. Does anybody have any questions about what I just said? Okay, hold on a second.
I've not done the application, I don't do things online, and when does this all have to be turned in?
Well, good news, you're not behind. Nobody's done the application. It's not an official application yet. So please don't fill this out, by the way. It's just a draft. So this is not official yet. This will not be official until it is approved here in this room. Once that's done, we will ask folks to complete it ahead of our January meeting. Okay? And of course, if we don't reach 20 members in January, we'll keep recruiting members until our membership is full. And we, like I said, we're gonna have this online and we'll have paper copies. So we'll have paper copies available for folks as well. Any other questions about this?
When the paper copies be available?
Well, after it's approved.
I'm so confused, I cannot follow you.
So if we'd like to add something to this application,
That's where we have a conversation.
okay. Because I'm not seeing anything on the application. I feel like I would want to know if someone is currently literally homeless, like on the street or vehicle homeless. Because the more current their experience and the issues they're having, the more information we have to work with. So I mean, I think it's good for us to be able to ask if they're currently on the street in a vehicle, are they homeless at all right now?
So you would say on number 3, okay, where it says lived experience, do you have any lived experience of homelessness? Yes, no. Have you experienced homelessness within the last 7 years? Would you like us to instead change it to, or even how recent is your experience, and then they can choose current, 1 year, 2 years?
Good, but we'd also like to know if they're on the streets or if they're.
Can I ask a follow-up question before that? When we're talking about on the street or in a vehicle, do we want to ask, do you have experience sleeping in shelter on the street in a vehicle so they can check all of the ones that they have experience with? Okay.
Ideal. I've seen on the application, like, more questions, where did you sleep last night, or where did you sleep last week?
Mhm.
That would probably be a good idea.
Want me to check boxes, so people can check more. Okay,
And then if you want to, let's do the check boxes for on the street, shelter, vehicle, and and that should pretty much be self-explanatory where they slept last night. You know what I mean? If they tell us that, then we know where they slept last night.
okay, so this is not mine. Yeah, this is not, this is just a draft.
Yeah.
So, so we will take out, have you experienced homelessness within the last year? We will replace that with how recent is your experience?
Yes.
And then we will add a checkbox for, where you slept, what kind of like service experiences do you have as far as like that is concerned?
I would just put street shelter.
Thank you.
Just that, because that has been, I've been told by certain people that there are differences.
There is, yeah. Wonderful. Oh, 1 second. Gary had a question for a while and he's been waiting on me and then I'm coming to you, Norma.
Kind of the question directed to the committee. And we're saying that somebody had experienced homelessness within the last 7 years. Would that?
That's what happens when you take phone calls. Okay, so that everybody catches that, because it sounds like not everybody did, okay? The changes that we're making here is number 3, lived experience. Instead of have you experienced homelessness within the last 7 years, we are going to ask how recent is your experience with homelessness? And it's going to be current with within a year, within 2 years, 3 years, so on, so forth, and then we'll go 8+ years.
What's your experience, you said? Yeah. Oh, my question was, are all these, questions required, except for it's indicated optional to be answered? As the last question on 6, it says optional.
Yes.
Otherwise, are they all required?
Yes.
Maybe you should put a star or something. Make sure that they're all required to be answered.
We can write
Because
them.
people might not answer all the questions.
I definitely think we can add up at the top in the explanation, something like, please complete this entirely.
Yeah.
All questions. Okay. Okay. So we'll put that up at the top, must complete all questions.
I see. And of course, you have to change that at the top where the instructions are. Please note that who experienced within the last 7 years. Does that have to be changed too?
No, that is still true.
Yeah, the other question?
No, that's still true.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for making sure that you knew what was going on. I appreciate that.
All right.
All right. Do we have other questions or suggestions? Oh, we did.
Just one brief.
Sorry, I knew I was missing somebody.
Oh, no, I just wanted to know, the lived experience, like, what did you say it was changed to?
Oh.
How recent?
Yes. That will be how recent is your experience with homelessness? And we will have boxes for current, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8+ years. We are also adding a question along the line of what type of homelessness have you experienced? That's not exactly how I'm going to word it, but it will be a checkbox question so that people can indicate if they have experienced homelessness in a vehicle, in a shelter, on the street. Any other questions or comments for this application?
You're not homeless in the last 8 years, are veterans still? Is it still on you for veterans to be a veteran?
Per the Lived Experience Advisory Committee charter, you do not have to have experienced homelessness within the last 7 years to be a member. The Lived Experience Advisory Committee charter says that you can have experienced homelessness within the last 7 years or are just really tied to homelessness and homeless services here within our community. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Coming at you, boss.
When you're asking physical disability, mental, emotional, human trafficking, isn't that getting a little bit too personal, especially human trafficking? Sometimes you can't comment on if you've been involved with human trafficking or different issues. I think that is going too deep into somebody's situation. Sometimes you can't admit if you've been involved in human trafficking
That is,
or domestic violence.
that is a really,
I might be breaking HIPAA laws.
well, voluntary disclosures in this environment wouldn't necessarily be that, but that's okay, because that is a really great point. And I'm not looking at it. Is there a preferred not to answer box?
No.
No, okay.
No.
That'll be, what we'll put there then. We can put a preferred not to answer box. The reason that we have those questions on the application is because that is included in the Lived Experience Advisory Committee charter. There is, writing in there about trying to ensure diversity in both, experiences, cultural backgrounds, so on and so forth. So that's why we asked that question, but you're entirely right. Not everybody wants to answer that, and if you don't want to answer that, you shouldn't have to. We're not here to make people uncomfortable. So I'm going to say that we add a prefers not to answer.
They can't answer questions. Not whether they want to, they can't, for the safety of their lives.
So they would write prefer not to answer. That's all they would have to do is write prefer not to answer, and we're not, yeah, that's okay. Let me make sure that I got that in the right spot. What question was that? Does anybody have it in front of them?
That's the first.
First question, okay.
But I don't know.
And none of those questions are illegal.
Okay,
Trying to verify.
The only information.
okay. I think that is a really, I thank you for bringing that to my attention. I really should have thought about adding that box, so thank you for that. Are there any other questions or comments about this? Okay, so I'm gonna really quickly review the changes that we've made here, okay? Does everybody have theirs in front of them? Okay. So we are adding up at the top in the description, something along the lines of all questions are required unless marked optional. Okay? We are adding under number 1, prefers not to answer. So that if somebody does not want to disclose, they do not have to disclose, that is voluntary. Yeah, optional. Okay. Mr. Swift suggests that you write optional next to that one as well, so that's what we'll go ahead and do. So number 1 now says optional and has a box at the bottom that says prefers not to answer. Number 2 is unchanged. Number 3, we are going to ask still, do you have any lived experience of homelessness? Then we're going to ask, how recent is your experience with homelessness? That will be a checkbox, and we will ask current, and then we'll have yours 1 through 7 and 8+. Then we will add another question in that section that will say, where have you slept? Or something like that. Please don't quote me on that verbiage. But it will be something about their experience with homelessness, and we will ask if they have experienced homelessness in a shelter, on the street, or in a vehicle. Okay? And those are our only changes. Before we take any action, again, this will be available both online and in paper copy, of course, once it's updated. So nobody filled this out today. But this will be available online and in paper, just to make sure that it's accessible to everybody. Do we have any other questions or comments or concerns about this? No? Okay.
One other question, and where have you experienced homelessness? Sometimes it can be just temporary stay in somebody else's place or in the backyard if you're, that somebody has allowed. Would that be considered, should an option be put in for that?
Do you want
I
to?
know that's happened to me. I was allowed to stay in the tent in somebody's backyard.
I would probably still classify that as street homeless, but if you're telling me that that's not how it'll be interpreted, then we need to add an option that covers that. I'm also wondering, do you want to add couch surfing? Is that, it sounds to me like that might be one of the things. Do you want to add couch surfing, doubling up?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, about, we're gone a little bit over, so I don't want to take too long, but about the, sleeping outside in a tent, again, that would be considered street homeless. But if that's not going to be how it's read, we need to make sure that it makes sense to the people who are reading it. Things don't always make sense to other people, but they make sense in my head. So does that make sense? Okay. Do we want to add, do we need to add something like in a tent or, okay, hold on.
Hotel.
Hotel.
I don't know if Norm said, Brian brought it up, but, like the area. Like the area where, like,
What part of- okay.
Tarpon Springs, Largo, Clearwater, St. Pete, Pinellas Park. Or outside of Pinellas as well.
Thanks, guys. You got it covered.
You think we could just specify whether or not this experience is within Pinellas County, make it simplified? And wanted to remind everybody, this is just a comment, the reason why we're doing this is because, remember, I've had discussions with the committee before. This information is used in our funding, our judgments, everything with the board. The information and data that this committee generates is critical. So we need to keep it correct. That the whole idea is to make sure that we have real homeless people, real experience, because this is the information that we use. And if we have people that don't have the proper experience, it could corrupt the process from within and make the whole thing even worse. So that's kind of why I'm pushing it.
Oh, I would just like to add the area, could be optional.
Okay. How does everybody else feel about area being optional? No, you want it to be required, Madam Secretary? Okay. Okay. Any other suggestions? Okay, so one more time, because we can't take action on something we haven't thoroughly reviewed. Okay. So, changes that we have made, everybody looking at it? Okay, changes we have made, page 1. Up at the top, all questions must be completed unless marked optional. Then question number 1. That's going to be an optional question, and we are going to add prefers not to answer as an option at the end. Question number 3. We are taking out, have you experienced homelessness within the last 7 years? And we are replacing that with how recent is your experience of homelessness? Current, and then we have years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8+. I knew that was brighter than it was a minute ago. Then we're going to ask some version of the question about where have you slept? And we're going to ask in a checkbox fashion so people can check more than one. Shelter, vehicle, street, couch surfing, or hotel. And then we're also going to ask in what part or in what area I'm gonna wordsmith this one a little bit, but in what areas, have you experienced homelessness? And we will ask inside of Pinellas, outside of Pinellas. Oh, we'll probably add like a Tampa Hillsborough option there.
Can we just phrase that as where have you experienced homelessness and let them write it in maybe? Like ask for a city or county or, because maybe they, in the last year, they've had to sort of hop around. Maybe leave some space for them to write in where they've been.
We could set that as another checkbox that people could check as many as they want. Yeah, we could do.
I still have a mic, or we could make that, bottom check all, or part of check all that apply.
Yep, we can do that. All right, okay.
And that's still part of number 3, correct?
Yes, that's all under number 3. And then we have not changed anything to 4, 5, 6, or 7. Okay, anybody have any questions about those changes?
Just a minor thing, I was thinking we're gonna distribute this before the point in time survey. I was thinking a little check box, which should be contacted for the PIT survey for 2025.
We can talk about that. Let's talk about that afterwards. So I wanna get some more information about exactly what you're thinking, so let's talk about that. Thank you. Okay. So, all of that being said, I'm gonna pass this along to one of our co-chairs or Madam Secretary. This is really a, would you like to call for a motion to approve? Take your call.
Any more questions or comments on the, LEAC member application?
I don't think it should say a military veteran with honorable discharge, and then right above it, you have a person living with mental or emotional disability, a survivor of domestic violence, all this other stuff. I don't think you should discriminate to veterans whether they had an honorable or dishonorable discharge. You have down here a military veteran with honorable discharge. And above it, you're asking if they've got mental or emotional disability. Everybody in this world has mental and emotional disability because the world is the way it is. And anybody that's been homeless is gonna have mental or emotional disability. And if you've been in the military, just getting through boot camp is gonna drive you crazy.
Okay, if I may, that is not discriminatory. That is information we gather so that we may assist people in the right direction for the correct services. Those questions are not illegal. It's optional for them to answer them, and it's how we determine where to get them assistance.
All right.
So if that's the case, I vote that, or I don't know. I just say we add, person of felony because they need assistance as well.
So I am happy to add to this. I will say that I have pulled what is written in our charter, which is where I got these from, but I'm happy to add to it as well, if that's something that you would like to see. Is that something that the committee would like to have added?
Maybe somebody needs help with.
Okay, absolutely.
It may be job applications or.
Okay, so maybe criminal history. Okay.
I knew there'd be a better way.
I'm not put it.
And not even need help from the reintegration program.
Okay, so it is almost 6:45, okay? We've used a lot of this meeting here. It's really wonderful, but I do want to make sure that we still have some time to talk at least a little bit about this pamphlet as well. So with that in mind, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns about the application? Okay. No.
Motion to approve. We
Second.
vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? Motion approved.
Thank you.
Business tonight.
Thank you all so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. I don't assume that anything I'm putting forward is perfect, so I really appreciate all of this feedback. It's really valuable. So with our last little bit of time here, we want to talk about this interacting with law enforcement pamphlet. Okay, this was brought forth by Secretary Kat McMillan. And a lot of work has gone into this. Kat, you put a ton of work into this. So I really appreciate that. So we want to go ahead and talk about that now.
Does anyone have any questions or information they'd like to include in this brochure? Any additions, any information that you think mostly those of us on the streets are going to have to deal with because of this camping ban? Anybody? I would like to ask that here on our third section where it says types of police interaction, if the printing can be reduced to complete sentences, because a lot of it's been cut out.
Yes, for what it's worth, when it does get printed, it will.
Everything will be there?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Because some of that stuff is pretty important.
Yes, it is.
And it's crooked.
Yeah, don't worry. When we print these, they will be printed, borderless. So yeah, absolutely. Good comment. If I printed 1,000 of these and they were cut off, I'd probably cry in a corner.
I think we might consider adding something that this only applies to outside, not inside. It also only applies during dark hours at night, not during the day. In other words, they cannot arrest you for sleeping or doing in parks or what have you during the day. Can we make that clear?
That is not true, Norm. That is incorrect. It is illegal to sleep in a public park at any time.
And are you saying this is illegal throughout every town in this county, or is it maybe just enforced in St. Petersburg?
In Pinellas
I don't
County.
understand.
In
I don't know.
Pinellas County.
Yeah, it's
Under
border.
this law, you can't even sleep on the beach anymore during the day.
You can no longer sleep in public or on city property anywhere in this county, regardless of the time of day.
Regarding the law, it's all of Florida.
Yeah, there are a couple of notes I want to make on that. So this law impacts every single square inch of Florida. Everybody in Florida is subject to this new law. Also, this specific ordinance, the anti-camping law, is in fact about overnight sleeping. And it is one of the discussions that municipalities have been having. What is overnight? Is overnight when the sun goes down? Is overnight when my toddler goes to bed? I don't have a toddler, by the way. How do we define overnight? And to be honest, it's kind of like it was written to be intentionally vague. But the law does impact overnight sleeping. Kat is right. There are municipalities that have their own ordinances about public sleeping. But for the anti-camping law, that is overnight. It does say on here that it makes overnight sleeping illegal, but are you saying that we should make that bigger?
Yeah.
Overnight?
Right.
Are you saying it should be bigger?
But it doesn't specifically say that daylight
That's
or
overnight right there, but
overnight,
but
but
you think that should be bigger?
not daytime sleeping. This specific law.
Okay,
Now,
so
maybe you're referring to other laws which individual municipalities, I don't know. have on their books in the daytime?
So
What you must be.
I would be concerned, and I can definitely take this to our attorney. This does not need to be a question I answer.
Yeah.
My concern with that would just be that might be interpreted as us telling people you can sleep outside in the daytime. And if the municipality that they happen to be in disagree with that, I don't want to be the reason somebody gets in trouble. So, if we think that we should have something that really specifically says that this is daytime only, it's just a question I would have to run by the attorney.
Yeah.
Do we think that that's something that we should be adding, that this law does not impact daytime sleeping?
According to the city ordinances, it does impact sleeping in public, period.
It does or
It doesn't matter what time of day.
So those are the city ordinances.
Yes.
And
And that's what they're gonna be used for enforcement.
it is, and that is where my concern comes from. But Norm is right in that this specifically is referencing Florida statute 125.0231. How many times have I read that? But I hear what you're saying. So it sounds like we would prefer to leave it without mentioning daytime, so that we're not confusing people. Is that the general consensus? I don't want to put words in people's mouths, so please.
I'm confused.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Let's unconfuse. So there is the state anti-camping law that has just passed, right? That is what we have referenced in this flyer. That is FS 125.0231. We just call it the anti-camping law because that's a mouthful. And that specific law is the law that the state just passed. Municipalities, the county, cities, towns are also passing supplemental laws that kind of cover them in case of a lawsuit. And those supplemental laws are doing things like defining what overnight means. Some places, I think the city of Gulfport has defined hours now for overnight. Other municipalities are specifically not defining overnight because they feel as though that vagueness gives them a little bit more cover in case of a lawsuit. So there are a few different ways that municipalities are handling this. Norm's question was, should this say it's okay to sleep during the daytime, or some version of that?
According to this statute.
Kat's statement is that though the statute allows for overnight sleeping, or doesn't specifically disallow overnight sleeping, municipalities are passing laws that do disallow daytime sleeping. And so Kat is suggesting we do not add that in because of the supplemental laws. Even though it's not part of this specific law, it is part of laws that counties and cities have tacked onto it.
And this is the very reason we need to educate people on how to interact with the police, because everyone is going to be confused. And if they don't know how to interact with the officers who are out enforcing or informing, or however that particular officer chooses to interact with you, if you don't understand the difference and know that that officer is not there to immediately arrest you, or may just need information, or may want to provide you with information, we're opening up a whole can of worms of people going to jail for nothing.
So,
Yeah, or that.
so, oh, geez, don't stand in front of that. So, does anybody have an opinion on, that daytime, nighttime question or idea?
All I'm saying is I've been through all of the city ordinances, every one of them. And according to Pinellas Park city ordinances, it is illegal to sleep in public on city property anytime.
So with that in mind, I would maybe recommend that just for the sake of not confusing people, we don't go ahead and add in the daytime thing.
Mhm.
But if there's anybody who feels strongly and differently, please let us know. Be a second, Jennifer.
So Largo, I knew someone just recently went to Largo Park and they informed me they took a little nap there and that they are not enforcing daytime sleeping. So I just wanted to add that. I wasn't there, I didn't see, so I don't know. I'm going by something here.
But I have got an officer tell me it's illegal, and I was asleep in Largo Park. Should we consider it with a grain of salt? Yeah, I wasn't there.
You know, that is, there is definitely, or as was just mentioned, something to be said for individual agencies and individual police officers. And, I'm really happy to say that we have, at the POC, a really strong relationship with some law enforcement entities in Pinellas County. In fact, Lieutenant Zach Haish with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office is planning to attend the January meeting, just as Mr. Swift did today, so that he can help answer some questions and dispel rumors and just make sure that there's an opportunity to talk to law enforcement, a lieutenant with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. So there's a lot going on with this law. There's a lot of confusion with this law. And law enforcement officers are working very, very closely together to try and address it. Law enforcement officers have, every municipality that we have talked to has on the record stated that they are taking a very firm stance. They are not arresting people for being homeless. They are not going back to the days of criminalizing homelessness. That is their very, very, very public stance. I think that's a positive stance. And I think that we just need to make sure we are providing education and holding people accountable. So that's where we are. Coming back to you, Jennifer. Oh, you got one.
So within the last 2 weeks, a racetrack on Overton 66, officer was there. If you did purchase something and you were sitting at the table, they asked you why you were there, and 26 people was arrested because they were homeless.
Yes, most of the municipality police, representatives that I've spoken to, bottom line is, if you're out there creating a nuisance for yourself, once they have a complaint, they have to follow through. And we have to get people to understand, don't make a mess, don't come and create a nuisance of yourself. If you keep a low key, they got bigger things to do than to run around chasing us. And they're not, unless they get a complaint, they'll leave us alone. But once we start annoying people, or drink, whatever, throwing trash everywhere, making a nuisance of ourselves, then a neighbor or someone, just like any of us would complain, they have to follow through. And if that follow through ends up in the arrest of the person, So, but yeah, we definitely need to learn how to interact with the police officers. They're human too. They can get mad just like we can. We're a jerk to them. How can we expect anything but the same in return?
Thank you.
I would just really like to emphasize empathy training for government, law enforcement, the people that are responsible for this law. Empathy training. Talk to somebody, hear their story. Why are they that way?
Good luck.
Before,
Good luck. Did you hear what I said? Rick Scott told me to my face, they don't give a shit. We're back to law anyway.
So, one of the things we do try to do is offer training opportunities to our partners. And I will say that if there are trainings that you think we should be offering at the COC level, for providers, for members, please never hesitate to let me know, never hesitate to let Megan know. And if we can, we will absolutely get them scheduled. Empathy training, compassion training, trauma-informed care training. Those are really, really important. Those are core to service. So absolutely. Do we have any other very specifically about this flyer? Do we have any other comments or questions for today?
I would suggest coming up with at least one or two sentences more for that type of police interactions. We draft statement will only be there as one for maybe one or two bullet points. I would highly recommend that. But maybe put a box around the tips for interactions, or this kind of emphasize out. Yes. That's gonna be kind of a template of it, in a couple of months. Next month.
I'd like to know why we included the Miranda warning. Because that's only used when you're under arrest, and it's read to you on the spot.
A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know.
But it doesn't, but you put the Miranda warning, but you don't say specifically, this is used when you're arrested.
Sorry, I think I left mine with,
Oh,
Norm.
this one,
Yes, this one's
this
me.
is the one, yeah.
Sorry, I knew I left it somewhere and I have to be able to look at what you're talking about.
I mean, it does say Miranda rights apply when in custody and being interrogated by the police. But that's incorrect because not every interaction requires a Miranda warning.
No, and that's why we have, the Miranda warnings do not apply when an individual waives them, has a lawyer present, is not in custody, so on, so
So
forth.
can we put that above the Miranda warning so that, you know, it tells you that they apply only when you're in custody?
Or when you're being arrested.
Yeah,
Okay, so move the,
yeah. They
Move
don't
that
do it.
up. Okay.
That's right.
You see,
got it.
You have
Yeah,
to
because-
clarify that.
And then now that I have mine back, Mike, I want to make sure that I actually mark your notes. So you wanted to do a box around tips so that it's separate.
And I would think maybe the box around Miranda rights, Miranda rights paragraph. Emphasize, a little bit of emphasis,
Okay.
I would change Maria, right?
to know your rights.
Jennifer, I know that you had a comment there and I just didn't hear one.
So actually, so for the Miranda rights, I would just, instead of saying Miranda rights apply when in custody and being interrogated by the police, I would just put Miranda rights apply when you're being arrested.
Yes.
They are only given to you when you're being, we are arresting you, you have the right to remain silent and we're putting our handcuffs on.
Yeah.
And then also too, the Florida ID, like you are only expected to identify yourself to Florida law enforcement, officers, when you are stopped on suspicion of a crime. Do you know how many people I've seen just stop walking on the sidewalk with a backpack?
Yeah,
I didn't know I said that.
so this is very specific to what the law is. What happens in practice might be different. And I want to tell you, if a police officer asks me for my ID and I want things to go smoothly, and I say this assuming that everything is going well, it is generally, and what organizations like the ACLU will tell you, because I know I did a lot of research on the ACLU for this, is that they recommend, if asked for ID, they recommend giving ID. If you can, if you're comfortable, that is their recommendation in that instance. So what we've written here is direct from the ACLU. And how exactly do you think it should be changed? It's okay if you want to say, let me think about it. If you don't have the answer right now, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's okay.
The answer right now.
That's okay, if you just think it needs to
If
be
I go out
resolved.
for a walk, if I go out for a walk, because everybody has a different schedule.
You know, everybody is, you know, some people are night owls and this and that, and I go out walking at midnight. You know, just good one, my apartment complex, I have to be 25 feet away from the apartment to smoke. So at midnight, I go out smoking and I have a police officer stop me. I should be able to invoke my right to say, especially if he stops me, without there being any issue.
So,
Like, sorry, officer, you know, I'm out smoking, I'm not doing anything. Am I free to go? Yeah.
so that is still, let me add one thing to that. So that is true. However,
They should have.
However-
The same as I have.
yes, however, that will not be something that an attorney would probably allow us to put into this document because we don't want to advise people to take action that might cause them harm. I'm with you there, and by the way, I think knowing your rights and exercising your rights are exactly what we are here for. We have questions down on that end, and then we're gonna come back down this way, okay? But I wouldn't be able to put that in just for that
Oh,
reason.
yeah.
Okay,
Jen, FYI, first of all, it is not illegal in Florida not to have an ID. Second of all, unless an officer, his first words to you are his probable cause and that you're being detained, you have the legal right to walk away without saying a word.
Exactly. That's the very first question you should have answered by the officer, period.
When they approach you, they have to announce their reason for approaching you. If you're out for a walk and that's all you're doing and you're by your apartment, you don't have to have your ID on you, you don't have to say a word, and you don't have to stop.
so it is 7:06 right now. Is everybody okay if we continue this conversation for a few more questions before we adjourn?
But yeah,
Okay, just,
You don't hear those words.
before my opinion, the Miranda warnings are only given when you're,
yep, we're gonna move it.
apply when you're arrested.
Yeah, we're gonna move that one, we're gonna move that one up top there, and it's gonna say, it's gonna have that and that, we're gonna move it up top.
And I would just make it simple, Miranda rights only apply when you're in. When you're in.
I would, again, have to run the language by the, this is language from an attorney's website, which is why I'm comfortable presenting this way, and I'm not saying no, I'm just saying, have to run it by the attorney first.
Make it simple.
I love simplicity, and I think simplicity is always helpful. So thank you very much. We had some questions down on this end. I'm not sure who raised their hand first. I'm very sorry. Do you know, Norm? Okay.
Well, I just had since we're facing the start, in January of the real enforcement of this law, can we put on the agenda discussion of solutions, which we as HLI can try to implement through other organizations, sick counties out, which will help alleviate. I think that's an important question to tackle. Put that on the agenda, the next is not on it.
So there is actually a COC task force that has been meeting regularly to discuss solutions. And Gary and Mike have been a part of this task force representing the Lived Experience Advisory Committee. But what we could maybe do is, I definitely want to talk solutions. We have, by the way, talked solutions in this group. We have. So, microphone, Norm, you know the rules. So the task force is meeting regularly. We are still making progress there and trying to identify solutions. One of the ways that we have solicited some feedback from the Lived Experience Advisory Committee with regards to this law is the shelter survey, for instance. That shelter survey was reviewed by the task force members. It was sent to the COC board, and there has absolutely been some room for input that way. And I would love to have more input about solutions. I really, really would. I want to make sure that there is ample time to have this conversation. At our January meeting, we must talk chair elections. Our chairs, per the charter, are elected once a year. In January, we must elect a co-chair, and a secretary. We will also have a presentation from Lieutenant H. So I just want to make sure that we have ample time for this discussion. What might be a good idea is if we have a work group meeting one day, and anybody who wants to participate can come and participate, so that we can sit down for a couple of hours and just dig into the anti-camping law and proposed solutions. I think that would probably be a way to make sure we are really, really honing in on this specific topic and that we have the time to dedicate to it. Because as you can see with today's agenda, sometimes it's really hard to carve out the right amount of time for really important topics. Now, how does everybody feel about that as an idea? Is that something that people would want to participate in? Oh, I don't need to wait to give you this one right now.
What is the outcome when a police officer approaches a homeless person now? Is it up to the police officer whether he lets the homeless person go, writes the homeless person up with a citation, or arrests him? What's the outcome?
It's always up to the officer.
Well, are you saying with respect to this particular statute? Okay.
Yeah.
Mary, I think the statute was read that it's the same person and a continued second time with this. The first time, if this is, it's all right to issue just a warning. They cannot be arrested and taken. According to the way this statute has been written, I think.
So,
Okay.
so the statute does not say that you have to arrest people. It doesn't say you have to give warnings. That's
Yeah.
not part of the statute. I think to answer your question, as Kat said, there is always some officer discretion in interactions. That being said, law enforcement agencies are creating standard operating procedures. They have them, and they are creating them with regards to this very specific law. And one of the things that we are hearing a lot is, for instance, y'all heard of the 3-strike rule? That is one of the things that we have heard.
Yep.
So if you are in a municipality and you interact with a law enforcement officer and they say, you can't sleep here, I'm sorry, you gotta go, do you want me to take you to shelter? And you say no, okay, that's one. The second time, that's two. The third time, that's when, according to some policy, there would maybe potentially be some action. Again, there is always room for officer discretion in every single interaction, just as there is with anybody in the world, always up to the individuals. But I hope that answered. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, somewhat, but some people are not allowed to go back to shelters that they've been at. I mean, I can, I don't want to, but I can. But there's a lot of people that cannot go back to Pinellas CoC. They cannot go back to Safe Harbor. They cannot go back to Saving the Fall. So what do they do?
The solution there, ultimately the solution there is hopefully we can find another place where you can sleep sheltered. But the honest answer is to not be in the same location. To not be in the same location is the best answer I can give there. It's not a very good one, but it's the best I can give.
And I would highly advise, don't be rude or belligerent.
Always good advice.
Exactly. A good idea for everyone when you leave here, if you have time, is to reflect on the meeting and to sit down and write down what your ideas are instead of waiting for a workshop. Because a lot of times good ideas come when we're by ourselves, we have time to think, we have remember everything we've been hearing, and really good ideas come out of that.
And then we can submit them and decide when
Absolutely.
when to put them on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Love that idea. I don't know about y'all, but I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I say, oh, that's genius. Do I write it down? No, I do not. Do I remember it in the morning? No. Do we have any other comments or questions about this pamphlet?
When was the meeting? What is that? Meetings and people can attend and talk. What is it?
Yeah, so that would be, if we want to have a meeting outside of our normal meeting schedule, just to talk about solutions, potential solutions to the anti-camping law. And what that work group would do is we would get together for 2-3 hours. We would talk about solutions, have some snacks, because we always have some snacks. And we would take our favorite ideas, put it into a little document, and then we would bring it to this larger committee.
Yeah.
For discussion, review, ideas, collaboration, and then if there is action identified there, okay, recommendations for the COC to take advocacy issues that have been identified, then we're able to push that forward. We can take that to the advocacy committee. We can take that to the, it's no longer called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. It is the System Disparity and Inequities Task Force. So we can take that to them. We can take it to the COC board, and we can hopefully make some progress forward. And you do have advocates in these rooms at those meetings. It's not just going to be me saying the Lived Experience Advisory Committee said this. Both Mike and Gary serve on the board, okay? Mike also serves on the COC's executive committee. That will be true even after elections. So if these gentlemen are not reelected as co-chairs, they still have 1 more year on their COC board term. So they will still be, no matter what, representing this committee on the COC board for at least the next year. Then they have the option for another 2 after that if you want. So we do have representation at the COC board and the COC executive committee. Gary, you've also been a member of the Data and System Performance Committee, where they really analyze and review system level data. Jennifer has been participating. We've had a couple of the advocacy committee meetings, and Megan actually just got the schedule finalized for 2025. So Jennifer is participating in the COC's advocacy committee, which is very new. And so there are voices other than just me and Megan in these rooms to bring forth the suggestions, the recommendations, the ideas from this committee. So if this group wants, which it sounds like we do, we'll schedule a work group meeting. We will talk about possible ideas and solutions. We will bring that to the group as a whole, and we will move forward from there. If there is information that you want, if there is data that you want, if there is research that needs to be done to prepare for this, please let us know. Okay, because if you ask me how many men above the age of 55 are staying in shelter who are veterans, my answer is going to be, I have no idea off the top of my head. But if you ask me, can you tell us in 2 weeks how many of these people are this? My answer will be yes, absolutely. We can pull that information in a report. So if there's data that we need to see, please let me know ahead of time. Otherwise, of course, I will have limited access. But I hope that that answered that question. Jennifer, are you stretching or do you have a question? Okay.
Thought that was good. So we're doing the laws and everything for us, the homeless committee. What about the pets? Is there anything being done for the pets that are homeless with their, parent or maybe? Out of curiosity.
Do you mean at the system level right now, or are you talking about solutions that this group could talk about at the work group?
Any of it.
Bring it to the work group. Absolutely, bring it to the work group, and that's something that we can talk about at the work group for sure. I think to supplementally answer your question, There is only one pet-friendly shelter in Pinellas County, and it is CASA. CASA is the only pet-friendly shelter in Pinellas County.
Pinellas CoC used to be pet friendly.
They're not. I can't speak to what they used to be, but
They trespassed me for letting the dog out there, right, went through the breach laws. Can't go leave.
yeah, so that's, I think that helps answer your question.
Fully impressed.
Sorry to hear that. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns before we adjourn tonight? Thank you, everybody, for staying with us late, by the way.
Is the CASA that you referenced to Jennifer, is that the same CASA that's listed in the stack page? 727-815-4912?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted.
Very welcome.
That's domestic violence.
Yes, and that is the local domestic, or one of the local domestic violence shelters, yes. All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns before our co-chairs adjourn us? All right, so we will work on getting this work group together. Give us a little bit of time for that. We're probably looking at January for that, but I'm looking at Megan's face right now, and I'm not 100% sure what the schedule looks like, so we'll get back to you. Yeah, we'll get back to everybody about a work group, but we will add that to the agenda. We will make sure that that happens, because the entire idea of being here is participating and having a say, making a difference, and being part of the change. And I want to make sure that there's ample time for that. So I think this is the way to do it. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you need the information. And other than that, who's adjourning us today?
All right, I'm sorry I was late into the meeting. Very informative. We got to meet the ACO, which is important. And we've definitely got some good information on the pamphlet that's going to be distributed. And I just want to say, everybody have a Merry Christmas, a safe New Year, and say just keep calm. It's not the end of the world, and we will get through this. And in the new year, we'll have more information, so that we'll be more hopeful. We'll have some definite goals for this committee, and I definitely can make some goals for the HLA and the executive committee, so that we can have solid progress for a better outcome by the end of 2025. With that being said, everybody have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and the meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
All right, everybody come on up.